Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. In today's video we're gonna make the pattern for a basic dress with the addition of 2 centimeters. So we're gonna make the pattern for a very tight dress and whatever garments you can construct out of a very tight pattern. First of all, before we start this video, I hope you had a great Christmas or whatever you were celebrating. I hope you had great winter holidays. As I'm pre-recording this video, I don't know yet if I had, but I guess I will, because family is always great times. I love Christmas, I love gifting, I love making other people happy. That's why I can assure you that I had a great Christmas. Anyways, another thing that I wanted to address is I thought I was really smart today when I started filming this video. I thought, why not add a second angle? Why not make a POV? Why not put my GoPro into action? So I strapped my GoPro on my head. You will see it in the video a few times, but it didn't record because my GoPro just randomly decided to freeze on me whenever it was, you know, it's time to shine, basically. I did a few test shots just to see if the angle was right. It was working fine, and then right before I started filming, it just froze on me and it didn't record anything. So we're gonna have just one angle in this video. Yeah, that's just one thing I wanted to put out. I had technical issues. So regarding the pattern that we're gonna make today, we're gonna make a basic dress pattern with an addition of 2 centimeters. So a very, very tight dress pattern. And I addressed in my first episode, which I'm gonna link in the eye right now, you can click right there, what you need to do to add fullness into your dress pattern and how I did it and why I did it and so on and so on. I'm explaining everything right there in that video. So please make sure to just watch the previous episodes before you watch this one, as the first and the second ones are actually the base for what we're doing right here. And I wanted to say that the construction of dress patterns, regardless what addition you put in, is always the same, obviously. You're gonna draw the same lines, just with different numbers, basically. That's why I'm not going to make separate videos for different additions in my dress patterns, because they're the same constructions. I will address whenever there are numbers that you have to choose in regards to what pattern you're making, what garments you want to make from this pattern. Because there are a few spots, especially when you put darts in and when you draw the hip curvature and so on, where you have to address that. So I am explaining what to do in what situation. I'm obviously gonna do what is making the most sense for a 2 centimeter fullness. So I just wanted to put it out there to avoid any confusion. I can make a video in the future where I am explaining and addressing the different calculations, numbers, and additions, basically for different, fullnesses for the patterns. So I am doing 2 centimeters fullness right now. There are 3.5 centimeters, 4.5 centimeters, 5.5 centimeters, and 7.5 centimeters for different garments, basically ranging from a normal dress to a coat. And these patterns need to have different numbers added into the calculations at the respective parts in the video. You're gonna see it, I'm gonna address it. I just wanted to put that out there just to avoid confusion or comments basically asking me what to do in this special situation and so on and so on. But with all of that said, I guess we're just gonna jump right into the video. So if you remember, we did this sheet in episode 1, we did a bunch of measurements in episode 2, and we didn't really use any of this because we were doing a skirt, and we're actually gonna use this with the fullness of 2 centimeters for our first dress pattern. So a basic dress pattern, and I'm gonna use my thick pencil again for you to be able to see. We're gonna need half of your hip width plus a little bit more for the whole width of your dress. Make it a longer paper piece because we're gonna have the addition of the upper torso. So make it a little bit more. I think around 80 centimeters should be fine. And we're gonna start with a line on the right side, and that's gonna be our middle back line. Okay, so the first thing we're gonna do is actually make a point somewhere up here, and this is gonna be our shoulder line. We're gonna take our size chart and we're gonna look at RH, back, neck to bust height, so where your bust line is gonna be, and we're gonna measure that down. In my case it's 19.5 centimeters, and this is gonna be our bust line. Next thing we're gonna do, everything's gonna be measured from the shoulder point, so just leave your ruler right there, put your bust line in, and then we're going to continue to our waistline, which is RL, back, neck to waist. In my case it's 42 centimeters. I'm going to put waistline right there, and then we're going to go down to the hip line, which is HT, crotch depth. In my case that's 61.6 right there. Everything down here is just additional length for the pattern itself. It doesn't need to be a whole lot. I'm just gonna do 20 centimeters as that is the usual. Everything gets angled to the left. I hope you can catch a good look at what I'm doing through my GoPro. So once we have this, we're actually gonna angle our middle back. So for this pattern we're not gonna have a fold on the middle back. We're gonna measure in 2 centimeters on our waistline and all the way down to our hemline. And you can technically just take this out either from your side seams or from your dart. So this is our new middle back line, and this is 2 centimeters out everywhere, and then you just make a line from this to your shoulder point. So we're gonna measure a bunch of measurements to the left. The first one is your back width. So looking on the size chart, RB with all of the additions that you put in my case 0.5 centimeters. So the whole bunch is just measured to the left. In my case it's 16.75. So this is our first point. Then from this point on, you're gonna measure 2/3 of your AD, so 2/3 of your armhole width. We already did all of the calculations in episode 1 in this small spot right here, and we're gonna take the 2/3 of your armhole one. In my case that's 6.5. We're gonna measure that to here. This is basically where your side seam from your back piece is gonna be. And in order to continue with your pattern, you're just gonna put some distance between the back piece and the front piece. I'm just gonna measure here 10 centimeters. And then here, from the 10 centimeter point on, you're gonna measure 1/3 of your AD. In my case that's 3.3. And here is where your front piece is starting. So 1/3 of your AD, I'm actually gonna write all of the abbreviations down here for you to see what I'm doing. And then from here to here, you're gonna measure your breast width. In my case, this is down here, it's 18.5. Everything obviously measured with your additions. And this here is your middle front. You can angle the whole thing down. This is our middle front. There's a bunch of vertical lines that we're gonna draw right now, and they're all gonna go from different points to different points. The first one we're gonna draw is this one from our back width. This one is actually gonna go all the way from your shoulder line down to your hip line. So you're just gonna make a vertical line all the way down to your hip. This one here's gonna be our armhole. So this one doesn't need to go all the way up to your shoulder line, but it needs to go down all the way to your hemline, because that's actually the side seam of your back piece. Now here we're gonna do the same thing. This is also the side seam of your front piece in this case, all the way down to your hemline. This one up here is just gonna go from your waistline all the way up to your shoulder line. And this length here, we're gonna divide in 2. Now we're not gonna do just the middle, but we're actually gonna calculate from here to here. We're gonna go to our bust, and we're gonna divide that by 10. And then, since we're doing a very tight dress with just an addition of 2, we're not gonna put any additions onto this measurement at all. Depending on what kind of garment you make, you put additions to it. So if you're making a wider thing, you're probably gonna want to add between 0.5 and 1.5 to this calculation. As we're gonna do a tight basic dress here, we're not gonna put any additions to this. So in my case, we're just gonna go 8.6, so 1/10 of my bust to the right. And this point here is gonna be our dividing line all the way from our shoulder line, down to the hemline. So the next thing is we're gonna measure from our shoulder point to the left. Now this one is also a calculation, and it involves another measurement that I did not put on the custom size chart, and that one is the circumference of your neck. And you can just take that, it's a simple measurement, you can just quickly do that. And for my case it's a 35, and the calculation we're gonna do is your circumference of your neck divided by 6 plus 1 centimeter. So in my case that's 6.8. Just quickly gonna put that there. And then once we've done that, we're gonna go up 2 centimeters and just mark that point. Now once we have all of these points, we're ready to make some curves. So we're actually gonna form our back neck hole, and I'm using a handy curvy ruler like this, which is just helping me to form a really neat and nice curve, just like that. And then once we have that, we're actually gonna take a ruler from this point. So this is where our back width and our shoulder line meet. And we're gonna go down 1 to 1.5 centimeters right there. I'm just gonna do the middle of that. And we're gonna draw a line right there. Just make sure to elongate a bit. And this is our shoulder line, the final shoulder line basically. Next thing we're gonna do is actually mark our shoulder point. So you're gonna refer to your size chart. On the back side we calculated our shoulder width plus additions. In my case that's 13.6, and we're just gonna measure this down right there. And this here is our shoulder point. Next up, we're gonna divide this from this point down to your breast line in 2. So I have 18, around 18, so we're gonna do this, and then we're gonna mark this point 1 centimeter to the left. Next, we're gonna divide this point in 2, right there, and we're gonna mark 1.5 centimeters to the left. And these are just 2 helping points in order for us to be able to draw a nice armhole. So the next thing we're gonna do, also this point that we just marked right there, is an important one that you should remember. Let's just call it back armhole point, H.E. Don't remember that, whatever. Now we're gonna come back to the dividing line that we put in with the calculation earlier, where we just took 1/10 of your bust to the right. We're gonna measure from our waistline, so this point upwards, VL2. That's something we calculated from a measurement, the VL1. So in my case, 47.7 centimeters. We're gonna measure that upwards. Right there. And we're gonna angle this point to the left. Now this is a bit tricky for me to get there because it's pretty high. Anyways, from this point downward, so from there down, we're gonna measure BT2. That's also a number that we calculated from a measurement. In my case, that's a 31.2. Right there. And this here is our breast point. It should be where the highest point on your breast is. As we already did this line here, we can also elongate the middle front. And we are actually gonna calculate the neck hole as well. That's our neck width. In my case, that was 6.8. And we're gonna need this for here as well. We're gonna measure down 6.8 or whatever your neck width is plus 1.5 centimeters. So in my case, that's 8.3, I guess. Yeah. And then you're just gonna measure your neck width to the right. So in my case, that's 6.8. Just make sure that this and this is ending in a 90-degree angle, as this sits on a fold, and this up here, it's gonna get angled down for the shoulder as well, and that's gonna end up sitting right there, and it forms a really neat curve. So it's gonna get even more complicated, but stay with me. So from this point on, this is where we drew our 1/3 AD, and we're gonna measure upward, and we're gonna measure 1/4 of our AD, and we already did that in this spot right there. In my case, it's 2.5 centimeters, and we're just gonna draw a line right there, because this is gonna be the equivalent to this point just in the front. Now, we're gonna measure from this point all the way up to where our shoulder line meets this vertical line. That's in my case 18.1, and we're gonna measure that upwards minus 2 centimeters. So 18.1 minus 2 equals 16.1 right there. And these are just helping spots, because this from here to here is a radius for a circle that we're gonna draw like so. So the easiest method is obviously to just take a compass. If you don't have a compass lying around, most of measuring tapes nowadays have a hole somewhere at its end, and you can just lay it down, put a pen right there, and draw the circle. This is basically the same thing, so it works the same. You just put your pen in here, right there, hold it tight, and do this. That's all you gotta do. You can use any ruler with a hole, doesn't matter. You can just use a compass, obviously. You can make it yourself out of cardboard, this, and you're done. From here, so the point that we just drew and we drew the circle on, we're gonna measure 1/20th of your bust. So for this, you're gonna take your measuring tape, just because you need something flexible, and you're just gonna measure 4.3 or whatever 1/20th of your bust is, right there. You can put a +1 here or any addition between 0 and 1 if you want to. I'm not gonna do that right now, just because this is gonna be a very tight dress, so no additions. Next thing is another circle, and that one's actually gonna start from the breast point that we measured before up to here. So we're gonna do this right there. I found out that I have these buttons right there, so I can do this. And that's gonna act the same way as what I just showed you. So I can just do this, hope for the best, and draw a circle. We're gonna continue at our armholes. Now we did a few helping spots right there, and the only thing that's left to do is basically just connect all of these points up to your shoulder point. Kind of like this. Continuing on to our front armhole, we're first gonna draw a line right down here. This is just our helping line, and then we're gonna draw 1 centimeter to there, another helping line, and our armhole should end in this helping line. So if you do your curve, it should end in this line, in this point, and in this point. And just make the whole armhole really nicely like this. The next thing that we're gonna do, we're actually gonna draw the front shoulder line from here, and we're gonna do that by measuring your shoulder width. So from page 2, so in my case 13.6, and we're gonna measure that up to here until at 13.6 it hits the circle that we drew. Now we measure this right there, so in my case 2 centimeters, and we're gonna go back 2 centimeters to the right here. And this is gonna be our dart in the front, and we're gonna take that down to our breast point. Now we're gonna measure that point. So in my case it's 29.75 or something, and we're actually gonna mark that right there, because this is gonna be our line. So this here is gonna end up being sewn onto here. So this line right there needs to be the same as this one. The next thing we're gonna do, we're actually gonna look at the waistline and in the back piece. So we have this line right there, the waistline in the back, and this is gonna get halved, basically like this. And this is gonna get angled all the way up to your shoulder line. And you just need it to go to your hip line, basically. Now this is gonna be where our darts in the waistline are gonna lay, but we also need this for our dart that's gonna go right here where your shoulders are. Earlier we drew this point right there, and this is actually gonna get angled to the right until it meets this line that we just drew. And from this point upwards, we're gonna measure 1.5 centimeters. And this is gonna be our dart. So this is our shoulder dart. Now moving on to your waist darts in the front and the back piece. We already calculated this vertical line by this calculation, bust divided by 10, and we made this vertical line. And this is also where our front waist darts are gonna sit. So we have this line right there and this line right there, or this cross point, I guess, where our waist darts, front and back, are gonna sit. First of all, you're gonna measure your front waist width. So from your middle front to your side seam. That's 22 in my case. And then you're gonna measure the same thing on your back piece. So from your side seam to this 2 centimeters inwards point on your waistline. I'm just gonna continue measuring from my 22 point on. That's just making it easier to add up. It's 44 in my case. So we're gonna grab a paper where you can write that down. Now this is the start of a whole bunch of calculation. You're gonna subtract half of your waist circumference from this number. So in my case, that's a 32.5. And then, depending on what kind of garment you make, you subtract an additional 0 to 2 centimeters divided by 2. In my case, it's 0 centimeters anyways. Just for your reference, you would put 0 to 2 divided by 2 in this spot right here. I know it's complicated, but stay with me. So now, after we're gonna do this math, we're gonna come out to 11.5. So this is actually how much too big our waist is. So it's pretty much too big, basically. And this has to be divided onto different spots in your garment. So obviously we're gonna take in our side seams. To do that, we're gonna measure 1 centimeter upwards, first of all, at our side seams. That's just so that our waistline is gonna have a nice curve and a nice line. So once we have done this, we can say how much we want to go inward at the side seam. In my case, as this number is huge for darts, I'm gonna go in 2 centimeters each, so 4 centimeters in total at my side seam. You would go 1 to 2 centimeters inward here. Then we're gonna have our front and our back dart. So there's also numbers that you would normally do for your darts. For my front dart, I am going to do 3 centimeters. 3 centimeters is also the max. So normally you would go 1 to 3 centimeters in the front dart. I'm gonna pick 3. And for our back dart, you're gonna go 2 to 4.5 centimeters normally. And you can do the math right here. I have 4.5 centimeters missing still, so that's exactly what I'm gonna do. And that's our measurements here. 2 centimeters on the side seams inwards, it's just right there. And then you're just gonna divide the dart by 2 so that it's in the middle of the line that you already drew on both the front and the back. So 3 divided by 2 and 4.5 divided by 2. And this is our dart situation. Now everything that's remaining between those points that we just put in should add up to 32.5. To finish our darts, we're just gonna connect the front dart to our breast point. And we're gonna go down here around 12 centimeters. That's just a fixed measurement. We're gonna go in our back darts all the way up to your breast line. And we're gonna go down here 13 to 16 centimeters. Now this is quite a huge dart, but I know that I'm in relation to my waist kind of broad on the hip, so I'm not gonna make this too big. So I would say 14 is just fine. The bigger the difference between your waist and your hip line is, the smaller you want to make this lower part of the dart, obviously, because otherwise you're just taking more and more from your curve to your hip, and you don't want to do that. Then you're gonna make a line from your side seam right there, so that's your lower armhole point, all the way down to the 2 centimeters or whatever you did there. You're gonna do the same thing right here. Now, in order to draw the curvy line right here, just ignore these ones, these are wrong. You have to basically do the same thing that you did on your waist, on your hip line as well. 44 in my case, so whatever you measured previously here, minus half of your hip, in my case 48, and as you can see it's gonna be a negative number, and that's how it should be. And then you're gonna subtract another number. You would subtract also something between 0 to 2 centimeters divided by 2. In my case, I'm just gonna do 1 centimeter right there. So I'm just gonna take 2 centimeters divided by 2 and use this number. So in my case, this is minus 3. You have to divide that by 2 again, and it's in my case minus 1.5. Scrap the minus, you don't need that, you just need the 1.5, and you're actually gonna put this number on your hip line outward, and that's gonna show you how and where you're gonna have to draw your hip curvature. And you're gonna use a curved ruler for this because it's very easy. And then this down here just gets angled down at 1.5 centimeters parallel to the old side seam that you had. Now this might look like you're done, but you're not. There's one step that is very important that I used to forget all the time when I was in university, and that is referring to your shoulder line. So the only thing that's left to do is basically take your shoulder line in 1 centimeter in your front piece and out 1 centimeter in your back piece, just like this, and then just elongate those lines. And then once you're done with this, your basic dress pattern with an addition of 2 centimeters is done. Now there is another thing that I wanted to show you, just because I figured this is something I can add into this video. This dart right there. Some might think this is a weird place to put a dart, and I agree. Why not just put it on this line? So what you can do right there, I'm not gonna do it right now, but what you can do right here, you can cut into this dart all the way to here, not quite, but just a small bit in front, and cut all the way on this line almost to that point as well. And what that does is basically creating a point where you can change the position of your remaining piece, basically closing off the start and opening a location over here. And that's basically making nothing else but relocating the dart, not changing any measurements, not changing the width of the dart or whatever. This is in relation to this dart. The width is gonna come out right there, how it's gonna come out, because you're not doing anything else than relocating. So that is another thing you can do if you want to, just for it to be neat and tidy. Every dart is gonna end up on these 2 lines. You can do that if you want to. I'm not gonna do that right now, as I am used to working with a dart right there, but I wanted to include this in this video as this is a pretty easy thing that everybody can do really fast. That is basically done. You just have to cut out your pattern pieces and sew them to fit them. You saw how this works in my first episode already. You can go watch that video if in case you are wondering how to fit a pattern. And yeah, with that, I hope you learned a lot. I hope it was clear how to make a dress pattern. I hope you could follow, or maybe you already have your pattern right in front of you because you made this parallel to my video basically. That would be very, very cool. You can tell me in the comments or send me a DM on Instagram or whatever, and we can stay in contact. That would be great. And with that, I wish you a wonderful day, and yeah, happy sewing. Bye guys!
Yeah.